Welcome back to the Sales Cadence Podcast. This is the podcast for everyone in sales, because everyone is in sales. We're all selling something. My name is Matt Sykes. I'm your host. I'm the author of the book Sales Glue and Converted. And if, like me, you're as passionate about helping people make truly epic buying decisions so that more people buy what you sell, great news. You're in the right place. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sales Cadence Podcast. Delighted to say that joining me today is Fred Copestake, host of the Sales Today podcast, 24 years as a sales trainer and coach, 14 times around the world, 36 different countries. I suspect there'll be more to come as well. Thousands of sales professionals that have been lucky enough to spend some time in Fred's company. Author of 2, but soon to be 3 books in the world of sales, which we'll certainly dig into. Fred, what an absolute privilege and a pleasure to not only meet you for the first time, but to introduce you and welcome you onto the Sales Cadence podcast.
Oh, brilliant. No, thank you for inviting me. It's one of those strange ones, isn't it, that we interact quite a lot on the old LinkedIn, and you feel as though you know someone, don't you? And it's like the first time we've actually chatted.
I guess that's one of the really interesting things about LinkedIn, isn't it, Fred? Because when you do meet someone for the first time, you think, well, is this the same person that I sometimes see on LinkedIn or not? And you absolutely are. I'm a reasonably good judge of character, and you're one of the good guys. But what I love about you, and you show up on LinkedIn, I guess every day. Is that something that you kind of aspire to do?
Yeah. No, I've got a system for it to make life easy for myself. Yeah, you know the adage, give a lazy person a hard job. That one. So I've worked out a system to do it, which both works what I'm trying to do, but makes my life easier doing it as well, and fun.
Yeah, perfect. Well, you certainly are consistent, and you certainly do have fun. And that's one of the things I like about you is you're exactly the same guy that I see on LinkedIn. You bring the knowledge, you bring the value, but you also bring some fun and some, because life's too serious sometimes, isn't it? So it's quite nice to see if that's someone on LinkedIn who actually, can bring a bit of a smile to people's faces.
Oh, thank you. Well, I guess it got me an invite here, so yeah, must
got you on here, my friend. Usual stock questions, Fred. I'm going to ask you. Go right back to probably primary school, possibly secondary school, before work became a thing. How did you make your first pound?
It was a job in sales. It actually was. My very first job was in sales, and what it was at the family company. We had a family company which is a builder's merchant, and every Christmas, Boxing Day was the annual sale. And when I was 8, I was allowed to go along and help. Help, he says. But what they did is they put me in this room full of these tiles, because it's builder's merchant tile stuff.
Yeah.
I had this massive orange polo shirt, because of the company uniform. Remember those big brown warehouse coats?
Yes.
Yeah, one of those things. And the premises was an old Victorian mill, a water mill. First job was in a Victorian mill, I guess. And so, it was December, it's stone cold, and I'm there just stood amongst these tiles, and people coming in, and I'm talking to them, and just helping them pick the stuff that they needed. And it was great fun.
Did you say as an 8-year-old?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know, it'd be totally illegal now, mate. Totally illegal. My parents would have gone to prison for letting me do that.
That big brown coat thing that you wore, was that too big for you? Was it like dragging on the floor?
Pretty much, yeah, like kind of over the end of my hands and all that, rolled up massively. And I say, this Victorian mill is made of stone, December, stone cold, but I was having such a laugh. I was just talking to people, helping them get what they wanted, which ultimately is what sales is, isn't it, really?
Exactly that, yeah.
Brown coat or not, but it's that. And, I got a little pay packet at the end of it, invested my earnings wisely. It was really fun, but I didn't know it was selling at the time, but that's kind of what it was, and that's kind of run through.
Did it have I suspect it must have had some kind of lasting effect on you, because you're still able to tell the story today. But
yeah, it is, and then kind of the more I think about it, the more that I think it did have an effect and probably pointed me in that direction. Now, maybe I was always going to do something businessy, the family business and that kind of stuff, but that experience of just being comfortable talking to people, helping them, conversations, it's stuck with me really. And it's been fun ever since. And I'd say I used to quite like reflecting on that, but it was really sad actually about a year ago. That premises burnt down. It wasn't ours anymore, but it was in the local paper, and I sort of saw these pictures of this thing on fire, and I was like, this is really quite sad, actually. It hit me quite
Blimey.
badly. Yeah.
And so we should really start the correct way, just to give the listeners who don't know you, Fred, or aren't connected with you on LinkedIn, there can't be many. Tell us first and front and center, this is me and this is what I do.
Yeah, no, you did it actually. You took it. You took a pitch. We found a Brindis Sales Training Consultancy, which is based on this privilege that I've had to travel around the world, working in so many different countries, different markets, different sales teams, to see the challenges that they have. Salespeople have, and then, God, I bet you're the same. I wish I got paid when somebody said, "Oh, it's different in my industry." Yes, there are differences, but there's a lot of similarity. And when you look at what those challenges are, that's what inspired me to write first book, shifted us towards this more collaborative selling approach. Second book came very quickly after because COVID hit, and that meant the changes sped up. Yeah. And then third book, as you said, it's just about to be dropped, is just that natural kind of evolution of where we're going and how we need to be more ethical in the way that we're approaching stuff. So that's what we concentrate on doing.
I guess one of the things that's really interesting to me is I'm mildly wound up by it, but I'm allowing that to happen to myself because there's a lot of people out there that do fall into sales. I get that 100%, but there's also those that find it. Were you a faller or a finder?
Total fluke, but only in as much as I was at uni and I hadn't applied for a job. I mean, can you imagine doing that now? I was at a local rugby club where I bumped into somebody, started chatting to him. He asked what I was doing, said I was at uni. He said, "Oh, interesting. What are you doing?" Commerce and Spanish. Ah, okay. Had a pint. That was it. I got a phone call a couple of days later. It's my dad, and this guy got in touch with him and said, "I want to speak to your son. We've got a position that he would be absolutely ideal for." So I'd love to give you a really hard luck story if I was forced into this thing. Come along to do this. And within 2 weeks, I was sat on a plane, business class, to Spain to go and do a job there to help launch product. So you know how LinkedIn sort of hard look back stories, and my first sales job was so tough. I'm gutted. I can't say it.
And what industry was that in, Fred?
That was working in fluid power, in pneumatics. So it was actually working for. So it was kind of in marketing, really, and it was a 6-month contract.
Yeah.
But what happened is they then said, "Look, we want to keep you on, so we need to go to work in sales because we want you to get some background in that, to then move back into a mixed sales marketing role, business development role, which was looking after West Europe." Yeah. Get you. And that made him go to cold countries and see if you could help them sell more. That's what it was, mate. So yeah, that's kind of what the background there was. So I guess fell into it. It's fair, but I'd got a degree in commerce and Spanish, so there was always going to be something commercial.
So how long did you stay in that role for, Fred?
So I was there for, 5-6 years?
Okay.
Well, it's a different role, so I kind of went through those different ones from that kind of marketing coordinator, product manager, business development manager, and that sales piece as well. And then,
by the way, that's a weird one, isn't it? If you're a BDM and you've got marketing experience.
Well, yeah, it's ideal, really. I mean,
can you imagine? Most people in BDM roles probably have got no idea of marketing whatsoever, have they?
It just makes sense that it fits together, you know.
Perfect. Yeah. So you did that, and then something weird must have happened in your life because you decided to step off the safe, comfortable world of being employed. I guess then into the insanity of being unemployed and working for yourself.
Well, actually, again, another very, was it fortuitous or was it just kind of things happened slightly easier in that I'd been on some training. And so I got in contact with the training company and said, "Hey, I can do that job." And they said, "Oh, come on, speak to us." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the man." And I got there and they went, "You're totally unsuited for what you think you could do." I went, "Okay, well, thanks for getting me in to tell me that." They said, "But your timing is uncanny because we're about to put an advert out for somebody that your profile is next to perfect." It was to run the basic sales course, so it's called the Essentials for Success, which was a 3-day residential first ever sales course that you go on. It was down at Hilton Warwick. It was run twice a month, and they wanted somebody who was closer to the delegate, the participant profile, to get hold of that, to tweak it, to bring it up to date, and to give them a better experience. So I was employed by a training company as a trainer. So I had no risk, really.
So they just told you where to go, where to be, and here's the curriculum. Off you go.
Well, there's a curriculum, off you go, but start to adapt it and bring it up to date and make it more fit for purpose, because sales, was starting to change a little bit faster back then, in the 90s. But yeah, it was because it was all open courses at the time. I did that, and then I did the following course. So three weeks of every month I knew where I'd be.
Right.
It was either Hilton Warwick or Ettington Chase. But then I moved, after done that for a couple of years, then I said, look, this is great, but it's starting to get a bit samey. I'd like to do more in-company stuff. So there's specific projects where we'd go work for a company, write stuff for them, and deliver around that. So, I kind of cut my teeth in the safety, if that is it's not safe, is it? But like kind of in the comfort of the training company, where I was kind of surrounded by all the support, and I could just focus in on being great at doing the training job. All the other madness came later.
It's never safe in front of a room full of salespeople, Fred.
No, that's why I corrected myself.
A lot of risk there, my friend. So you're working as a gun for hire, and then what happened? How did you create Brindis? What's the story behind that?
Okay, so one of the clients that we had was an organisation called Eurocermex, which was the subsidiary of Grupo Modelo, Mexican brewer that makes Corona Extra.
Okay.
And we'd done a conference for them in London, so I kind of led that off the stage. Then gone and done something in Germany and something in Spain, I think it was. And we'd gone to them and said, hey, look, you're selling through distributors. You guys should be setting an academy up so that you can kind of win hearts and minds of all these people, because they've got about 30 different distributors, one for every country, really. Long story short, they came back to me and said, look, we can't do it through that company, but we'd like you to do it. Okay. We've put me in a bit of an awkward position. So I said to the MD of the company, Structured Training, I said, look, that's what they've said to me. He said, what do you want to do? I said, Andrew, they've just offered me fly around Europe helping them sell beer. What do you think I want to do, mate? He went, oh, no, fair enough. He said, if it was anybody else, no, but you're the only one who really gets them. You've got the language on your side. They tap into you. Look, you've done right. I said, awesome. They said, well, what's the deal? I said, well, actually, they would prefer me to set up on my own to then employ me as a consultant. And get this. He went, oh, how much time are they going to use then? I said, 80% of the time. He said, what are you doing the other 20? I said, I hadn't really thought about it. He said, well, can you use that for us still? I mean, again, I can't even put a hard luck story around that. That's why I have to mess about on LinkedIn. I can't use the hard luck stuff. Because again, it was a charmed way to go in to set up my own thing. Because it was guaranteed work. I think they even bought me a laptop and stuff as well. And I was flying off around the world, like kind of doing really, really fun stuff. So, there are some bad times coming up. If we carry on down the track, I might start crying. But yeah, it hasn't always been as easy.
And then you built this academy from scratch. Is that how it worked?
Yeah. It was kind of our concept. So when you look at what they were doing, there was different programs. So we had selling through the off trade, selling in the on trade, building promotions, sales leadership. I think we probably had some tactical ones like negotiation and things, but really those core ones were offered that they either ran in Brussels, if it made sense for people to come there, or I would go and deliver it. That's places like Malta, Poland, Russia, Cyprus, that sort of stuff. I'd go off and do that there. So it was it was great fun, and that's where Brindis comes from. Brindis is Spanish for a toast, so like a chin chin toast thing.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I called the company that name. Yeah, so that allowed me to set that up, and yeah, that was some time ago. Yeah,
that's amazing. So 14 times around the world, 36 countries. What's the? I put you on the spot here, but is there a sort of? I'm sure there's many, but is there one sort of standout sales story or one standout story that you always tell at dinner parties?
Dinner parties are different podcasts. I can't really tell some of those. There have been so many, and you can sound a bit of a dick at a dinner party if you sort of name dropping about all these cool places that you've been to. But I really have. I guess the one which was just kind of a lot of people kind of find quite funny is when you sort of look at sales training now. And we were just talking before we record about kind of virtual or kind of classroom, whatever. the way we structured the sales training in the Corona Academy was really strange, in that we'd sort of do the day's training, and then when we finished, as often as not, we'd have the Corona bus outside. So a double-decker, open top double-decker, yellow bus with fridges on top full of beer, which we'd then drive around the city we were in to the hotel we're staying in. A little sightseeing tour. Brussels normally.
Yeah.
We then say to people, right, go and get changed, take them for dinner. Take them for dinner. Then we get back on the bus after dinner. And this is all part of the training program. This is written into the agenda, which is then visit the market. Think about it. Our market is pubs and nightclubs and bars and stuff. So we would then take people to show them the promotions. So we've been talking about how you build a promotion and get the walking balls and the catsuit girls and all this sort of stuff. Here is an example of what we're talking about. So that's part of the training to then do this until stupid o'clock in the morning.
Is anyone taking notes at this point?
Not a great deal. Just doing a lot of market research. Product research, product sampling.
You're right in the cut and thrust of the marketplace. So highly effective, I'd have thought.
It was, because look, we can explain this is how you use some of this point of sale material. This is what you're trying to do. This is the effect you're trying to get. When people were seeing it, yes, it would sink in. Now, the other thing that was actually going on, and I'm not kind of egotistical enough to think it was all about the wonderful sales training content. There's good stuff in there, but a lot of it was hearts and minds. So it was like, if we're giving them a really good time while they're doing it, then they would be closer to us when they go back to their distributor, who's got a ton of different beers or different other products that we wanted to win the brain space for them to go and do. So there was different objectives and stuff going on there.
Very good.
It was great fun. Well, but then I'm the one who had to get everyone activated in the morning.
I was going to ask you, what time does day 2 start?
9 usually. I remember I did one. This was a conference as opposed to training, but I did one conference, and I know there was a couple of guys that came in directly into the conference room. They'd literally been out all night.
Yeah.
They were all right for the first hour or so, but then once they start to sober up, they were baggage.
I remember a frightful night. So I'm based out in Norwich in the UK, and back in my years before I created Sales Cadence, I worked in the packaging industry. You could fly from Norwich to Schiphol. It's a 20-minute flight, effectively. It's like one of the shortest flights on the planet, Fred, but the most expensive. It's about 500 quid. Because it's just so convenient. Yeah, you can be checking in your bags, and then an hour later you can be getting off your bags off at Schiphol Airport. But I do remember a famous evening where the managing director of our particular cluster of plants came to Norwich to do the grand tour around the factory. And then in the evening, my boss, I was an account exec at the time, he invited my boss, who was a sales manager, invited the guy out for dinner, which I thought was a bad idea. But we all went anyway. And so we had a wonderful dinner. But it just so happened we had dinner at the airport hotel, which was literally a walk from the hotel across the car park to Norwich Airport. And so he said, let's meet here. We'll have dinner here because I've got to get the 6 o'clock flight in the morning. Anyway, he turned up for dinner at 7. The flight out of Norwich is 6:15 a.m. We're still in the bar at 5 o'clock in the morning with him. So you can imagine there's about 3 of us young sort of 20-something sales guys, and then the sort of managing director of the cluster, this German guy, and he was drinking like you can't believe. And 5 o'clock, he went, right, off we go. Good night, good morning, good day. And he just walks straight out of the hotel, straight across, straight onto his flight. So some funny old days. I don't think you do that these days. I think times have changed somewhat.
Times have changed, and even the kind of very first job in but packaging pneumatics, that kind of that engineering world. When we used to run stuff at Lichfield, I remember when the Scandinavians came over, it was clear what their objectives were for a couple of days in England, because they're like, for their prices, like, whoa. And when I was in the business development manager role, if I was going to Norway, I had to take him 200 cigarettes and a bottle of whiskey.
Really?
That was the price of the meeting, yeah. In fact, he paid me, yeah, but that was like, he just picks them up at duty free and I'll pay you, but if you don't, then I'm not going to meet you.
Let's talk about sales training for a minute, because you and I both do it. It gets a bad press, doesn't it, Fred? Why does it get a bad press, do you think, on LinkedIn? Is it an easy target, or is there some really shit training out there?
I don't know. It depends who it's getting a bad press from, because it gets a bad press from different angles, doesn't it? It depends who's having a pop that day, doesn't it? I mean, sales trainers were fighting with each other anyway, which makes no sense for me. Like the amount of discussion about whether my permission-based opener is better than your what. It's just so utterly boring. I've started tuning out of all of that because I do get quite annoyed by it in that you're talking about something that's about 5% of the whole sale. Now, okay, if you're an SDR, it is a big part of your life and actually it's almost the whole of your sale.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about, the more complex sale, and I'm defining that by kind of more decision makers, longer cycle, more working parts to it, it's just such a small...
Yeah.
It's just such a small bit. So I think sometimes that bickering amongst people probably makes us look like a bunch of idiots. I think some of the stuff that people talk about does still sound a bit dodgy, a bit manipulative. Really hammering in on pain. There's like slightly better ways, aren't there? And then there's also people who don't understand sales training, and they think that because they don't like salesy, they're not going to do sales training because that's what we're going to turn them into. But it's actually the opposite, isn't it? In that, because you don't know what's going on, because you have to sell, you're going to revert into this stereotype of what you think a salesperson does. You can do all the things that you hate. But someone who's been trained well isn't going to be doing that because they get it, that it's more about serving, it's more about customers' needs, it's more about recognizing what they're trying to achieve and getting their outcomes. So, yeah, it depends who's having a pop that particular day. And if it's everybody on one particular day, it can leave you feeling pretty bad, can't it?
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because the whole concept of sales in general, if you put training to one side, because you're right, it's a very small part of the whole experience. But I think sales in general still continues to be that one. I don't know what it is, but it just captures the hearts and minds of people, and I think that's part of the reason why it's such an easy target to hit. Because despite the fact that everybody complains about salespeople, I think I've said this a few times. So I was on somebody's podcast a couple of days ago, and Fred, I genuinely mean this. I can't remember the last time. Well, I think we might even have swapped messages about Swiss Tony. I can't remember the last time I ever met Swiss Tony. Right? I must have been either incredibly lucky or I don't hang around in those places where I can get sold to that much. Most of the salespeople I meet are either doing their best, but not particularly well because they've never been through any form of training or coaching. Or more often than not, they tend to be marketing people, not salespeople, because they're the very, very top of funnel. But I don't know. What about yourself? Do you ever come across that stereotypical Wolf of Wall Street character?
Not really. I mean, if you look for them, I know that sounds a bit weird. And why would you look for them? Well, it's our job, isn't it? And so, yeah, you're going to be scrolling LinkedIn because you're pretending you're working. But you also see people think, yeah, I'm not quite so sure about that. But I know you're right. I mean, now you're making me think. I can't think when I've been a customer and I've been on the receiving end of that, or when I've been training people, or certainly recently anyway, when there has been somebody I think you are that type of character. Now, in the past, yes, maybe it was more prevalent then. Maybe I wasn't quite as picky. I got put in some situations where people think, oh, bullshit baffles brains and I'll wing it. And yeah, I can talk hind legs off a donkey and all that kind of nonsense. But I just wonder if they're not around anymore because it doesn't work and there isn't space for them and they're baggage now. So, or again, maybe I'm just lucky, in inverted commas, in that I make my own luck to not have to deal with it.
I believe there's going to be a real cull of those that aren't very good because AI will just replace those that are bang average. What are your thoughts around who's left? Do you think there's a space there for people like, a bit like the people that you train, people like yourself, people like me, who are able to have a conversation with people, understand people's problems and challenges?
I think that is exactly where it's going. And yeah, the AI piece and the AI taking your job, I'm not so sure about that. The AI SDR, I don't know. Don't really care, to be honest. It's not the area I work in, so I'm not going to put too much time and effort into understanding it.
Yeah,
I can't really see how. But I think where the most successful people will be is just they are using AI, absolutely using AI. They're using AI to generate more insight, better perspectives, get faster research, deeper into customers. So when they do rock up, the conversation is richer, it's more valuable. And the salesperson is a sense maker. they can play that role, and they're helping people get their head around stuff so that they are valuable and the customer wants to speak to them. Now, if you're turning up as a walking website because you've learned all your product specs, and this is where we were back in the day, because that was the source of information. You're really not bringing anything to the party because people can find that on website or using AI themselves. It's that very human thing of helping people understand stuff, and in doing so, building that trust because you're the sort of the human face of the organization. That's why we will still need that function, that salesperson, to do that. But it will be a more accomplished role. It's not just a good old boy that can have a bit of a chat, tell a few jokes and all that sort of stuff. That one's dead. It's someone who's really bringing value to the party in that interaction. It's the value in the interaction as much as the value in the whole package.
Not to necessarily change the conversation. I want to keep on that theme if we can. I was on your website just doing a little bit of research, and you've got this wonderful drawing of the evolution of the salesperson, which I thought was fantastic. It reminded me of the evolution of man, right, to present day, and you very nicely explain the various different almost chapters of the salesperson going through the sort of the 80s and the 90s. Where are we at right now then, Fred? How would you define what is best in class? And that's a really wide question, so forgive me for asking it, but how would you define where we are in 2024? What does best in class sales look like?
I mean, let's refer back to that evolution that you talked about and just kind of highlight some of those areas, because basically I put that in each of my books.
Good. It's brilliant.
Well, because you need that, because what it's saying is that sales evolved. There's some stuff we want to chuck away, but there's a lot of stuff we don't. We want to keep it because it's foundational. Maybe just upgrade it to what the modern version looks like. And again, what I do is I go back to 50s and say, look, that was about effectiveness. So it's about process. Well, we need process. We need structures. We need tried and tested methods, methodologies, templates. Don't keep making stuff up. Great. Okay, we'll keep that. 60s, we then go to psychology, don't we? And so understanding how people think. How can we adapt to them so our communication is better because it's more comfortable based on what their preferences are? Yeah, really good. But we can actually do a really modern thing by plugging in like some AI that tells you somebody's personality preference before we've even met them.
Yes.
I mean, that's just getting spooky now, isn't it?
That is very spooky.
Crystal Nose or something.
Yeah, very spooky.
Well, in the 70s, we started talking about benefit selling, didn't we? And so, people don't buy the drill, they buy the hole. What's in it for me? What's in it for them? Look, you've got to understand that. People buying benefits. And then the 80s. Okay, can we jump? Well, no. Well, 80s was close, wasn't it? Objection handling and all that kind of, probably where sales, because we'll probably get itself a better name, and then it went mad again. But it's a series of commitments, and we have to commit. We have to move people on. We have to help them move on. And 90s, consultative selling, so understanding need, so asking questions to help people understand where they are now and where they want to be on the same. Again, foundational. I think a lot of people are stuck there, actually. So you talk about pain, which again, I'm getting more and more uncomfortable with that word. I get it. I know why people are saying it, but there are other things that happened. We go into the noughties, we talked about value-based selling. And that's that thing around the insight, the perspective, the shining a light on something that's a bit different to how people think. So we're needing these skills. We're needing all of these in the 10s. So I talked in the 10s about sales stature.
Okay.
I hadn't got a different word for it. But that was this kind of your reputation, or this kind of being considered the go-to person because you knew what you were on about, and how you could manage that reputation so that people would come to you. We'd probably say personal branding. I don't know many salespeople that like that term.
Yeah, they do. They struggle with that, don't they?
Reputation enhancement. I'm going with that now because I think people respond to it better, and kind of using the different ways in which you can do it, because even influencer people hate even more. So that's the sort of the 10s. The 20s I was calling out collaborative selling, so that's why I wrote book 1. So think like a partner, sit alongside the customer, so you work on this stuff together using those skills that we've talked about. And that was the kind of the call out for the 20s. But as I said, then pandemic hit, and so stuff started to evolve even faster. So that's why I wrote book 2. Partly because it was also lockdown and I'd watched all of Netflix and
Yes, you had some
By
time
the
on
time
your
you got
hands,
to the
didn't
end of the Tiger King, I
you?
thought,
Funny enough, I did the same.
come on, use your time better. Did you actually say, "Can't wake up, do something better than this"? But also because real and present, hey, this stuff is changing, so we need to be more accomplished and kind of just taking a lot of these techniques and just building them into the way we operate. That's taken us up to now. So look, that speed of change, because first book's 2020, second one 2021 too. Third one 2024, which is the ethical selling piece, which is that customers are demanding that we sell in that way. We have to be more ethical in the way we approach it. And the proof of that is pretty simple. One, look at compliance. Look at the hoops we often have to jump through to be able to sell.
Yeah.
Have you had to fill in a slavery, a DEI, a carbon footprint, and a whatever else type pro forma to run a couple of days training? Yeah. So, I mean, that's an indicator that people are finding this stuff very, very serious. Or people don't like talking to dicks. Well, no, I mean, I'm not voting with their feet. And then the dick is the kind of, the tricky dicky Swiss Tony, whatever. Or actually, the person is not really building any value in that. I've got this problem I'm trying to sort out. This guy comes in, wasting my time when I'm not dealing with this. I can get on with myself. So the way in which we set up to behave more ethically and kind of apply some of the best thinking, but just really deliberately to work like this, that's where I would say we are now. That's just put my money where my mouth is and wrote that book to help people get their head around how to do that. So it's not about learning principles, codes, morals, and philosophies and going off in the clouds. It's right, okay, here is stuff good salespeople do. They understand EQ, which means they can ask better questions. And they can listen, which then reinforces how they ask questions. Bang, skills, techniques.
Sounds like a winning combination.
Lead with the floor, blah, blah, blah. So we've gone into those very tactical ways of operating rather than learn codes and do this and just be good. I've read stuff like that. It didn't mean anything for me. So,
just so I'm clear, I think you said it at the top of the piece you just eloquently described there. But even though we've come from the 50s right the way through to the 2020s, did I hear you correctly? We aren't throwing all of this stuff away. We're just taking what's relevant from each of those decades, if you like, and pulling it together. Is that right?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We still need sales process. We still need to adapt to people. We still need to understand what benefits are all about. We still actually need to get a commitment and move people forward for their own benefit. We still need to have this consultative, questioning-based understanding of needs. We still need to understand value and how we can shine those lights on different things. Still need to be presenting ourselves as the best option and that people can kind of save time by picking us faster. And then we want to be collaborating and working with folk. So they all build on each other. Some have got a little more modern interpretations as well. But if we can think of it like that, and like Lego, isn't it? Lego's dead popular on LinkedIn at the moment. I have to get myself some Lego, I think. But it's like it's building these things up. So you've got the little blocks, and you can put blocks into little mini structures, and the mini structures into actually building something that's really quite elegant, and that's you, and that's the way you sell.
For all the right reasons, don't get me wrong, for all the right reasons, a real shift now towards buyer safety.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a point, though, Fred, where we have to just be mindful that we also need to do the seller safety bit as well? Or is it as a consequence of buyer safety that we protect ourselves as salespeople? If we do it the right way, if we keep our buyers safe, do we naturally then become safe ourselves?
I think so. I mean, I'd be interested in your definition on seller safety. I mean, my simplified version of why we go with ethical selling is that we create win-win-win.
Yes.
And by that, I mean, there's a win for the customer, there's a win for your company, there's also a win for your conscience. So that you're not doing stuff that, means you can't look yourself in the mirror in the morning. And that's probably where I would go with the seller safety thing. I don't know if that's the same for you or whether you've got a slightly different angle on that. Because I might have to go back and see if I can stop press and add a bit.
I guess where I was coming from was I actually think that if you do, and you must, of course, any salesperson that's worth their salt needs to put the buyer front and center of every conversation that they have, because without that person, you're screwed. It's over. I guess that if you are adopting those practices that you talk about and are in the book In Ethical Selling and the other books that you've produced, you're going to be doing it the right way, right? I guess what you're bringing as new, certainly to me, Fred, is this last win, because we all know of win-win.
Yeah.
But I like the last win very, very much. And so from a position of buyer safety, the salesperson naturally becomes safe themselves. Because if you put someone at the front of your conversation and you find out they're not the right fit, you're going to tell them. And you're going to back out of that conversation. You're going to pass them on to somebody. I know a guy called Fred, or I know a guy called Chris. Go and see those guys. They're much better at this than me. But you're removing them from your timeline. And that then keeps you safe as a salesperson, not wasting your time on people that you can't help. If you do it the right way, of course, you're not going to be forcing. You talked about that at the top of the podcast. You're not going to be coming across as that kind of needy and desperate person that we hear so much about in the kind of stereotype thing that we also talked about. I guess the only missing link for me is there a bunch of salespeople out there that sometimes don't go that little bit extra to just push a little bit harder in an ethical way, if that's allowed, where they do get someone to solve their problem with the product or service that they sell? Is there a risk that by being so buyer safety conscious that you don't follow through and make the sale for your organization?
Yeah, I think you're touching on what I'll call the Goldilocks dilemma. So like Goldilocks with the too hot, too cold, just right. It's like it's too hard, too soft, just right. So one of the reasons that people won't adopt ethical selling is that they'll look at it and think, this is too hard to do. It's too much to get your head around. It's hard to understand how to do this stuff. Again, we can blow that out of the water and say, well, no, this is just what good selling is. And if you're not doing it, you're going to be suffering, because this is just up to date, that timeline thing, that evolution we talked about. The too soft bit is, so you're asking us to be a pushover. You're asking us to be passive. You're asking us to be so transparent that we give away all our margins, and that basically customer is king, and that they direct everything. It's like, oh, no, not that at all. That would be wrong. So Challenger sale is a solid, interesting way of working, which with decent research and understanding how to manage your conversations. I will say the word push. Yeah, you would push your customers in the right direction with the right intent to do the best thing for them themselves. So yeah, that is part and parcel of what good selling is, because your safety is that I helped them to do the right thing here, so I can look myself in the mirror. It's aligned with my values, and then that's another area I just start to touch on. It's a big area, but the kind of, if you find yourself misaligned to your values and what you stand for and what you kind of know is right, how you want to operate for whatever reason, maybe the company's pushing you that way, the industry, you'll be uncomfortable, you'll be unhappy.
You will.
Unsafe to a degree, because it really will start to have mental effects.
Yeah, that's rooted in the world of EQ and psychology, that, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's, isn't it great that we're talking more about that? And it's not considered soft or soppy or, milk toast was a phrase I came across a few years back.
Milk toast?
Milk toast, yeah. I don't think it's an American word for someone who's a bit kind of, just wet. I don't know. It's not that. It's like, we have to get this stuff right, because otherwise we are going to be suffering. We'll put ourselves under an amount of pressure which isn't conducive. It's hard enough as it is, isn't it? Don't make your life more difficult by fighting against what you should be doing.
You're right. It's hard enough anyway without putting yourself under any kind of additional pressure and stress by the way that you feel shit. Are we still completely happy that at the end of the day we're employed, or we work for ourselves, or we're employed to go and win business? Obviously, we do it the correct and the ethical way, but ultimately our job in life is to put numbers on the board and money in the till. Yeah. But what I love about what you're doing with ethical selling is this is next level, right? Here's your job. It's a win for the client. It's a win for your organization. But the third and the missing element is it's a win for you.
Yeah. And that when those are aligned, you're going to end up doing it even better. And so it's going to compound into, guess what? You're really successful.
Yeah.
And enjoying life. rather than this is a real grind. No, really, this whole sales is a grind, and in the trenches, I hate that expression and all that nonsense. Glamorizing how hard it is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
You're not deep sea diver. You're not UFC fighter. Your job's to talk to people and help them. Come on. I mean, why are you making out this is like some special forces operation? I don't know.
So on the EQ and psychology side of things, I had a guy called Dominic Waters on the podcast a few episodes ago. He runs a sales or business development specific personality profiling tool, and I use it a lot with all of my clients. I'm in the middle of a project with a really good dynamic sales team at the moment, where part of the work was to SPQ everybody. It's the name of the profiling tool is SPQ. But SPQ everybody, and then coach the guys and girls as a consequence of the results that are thrown up. And there are so many psychological traits that we have as human beings that can either be red flagged or green flagged. I don't like the expression, but let's go there because people who are listening can understand what we mean. There are so many things that will come out when you are willing to invest the time to look at somebody's personality and see if that is aligned with the role that they have. But more importantly, where there are some slight challenges, so let's say some red or some amber flags, sitting down with the individual and saying, well, what do you think? Do you agree with this? I mean, it's your answer at the end of the day, so these are your flags. But how do you feel about that? How could we try and find a way to improve that? Would you want to improve that? So I think there's a huge amount of work that already happens in our industry to do that kind of thing. But I would love to see more, because as you just alluded to, Fred, it's a pretty tough gig anyway. I mean, emotionally, we're super high when we're winning, and sometimes when the pipeline's not full, we're getting ghosted or we lose a few deals, we can be super low, and it's never really a flat line, is it, in sales? I don't know if you've ever noticed that. The question I did want to ask you was it
actually, before you do that, sorry to interrupt you, mate. No, I want to go back to the question you asked earlier, and I just had a bit of a thought in that when you asked about why sales training is so poorly perceived, what we've just been talking about for the last 5-10 minutes is sales training. I mean, that's what I would include in sales training. For you including sales training, that is part and parcel of how you can be better at it. Is sales training, I don't think I know the answer to this, but anyway, I'll ask you, often product training? And people are subjected to this and have to learn all this stuff, and they take it away, and then when they're using it, it's not helping them. And they're going, I'm investing this time and effort for something which isn't doing me any good. I can't see the benefits of doing this. It's not helping me sell more. So actually, those two, and I've got my hands up, haven't I? Like as a spectrum, there's two ends of the spectrum of the sales training thing. That some of it's just not fit for purpose. It's not even sales training, and not where it should be today. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it gets frowned at.
I don't know the exact answer. What I would say is, I talk from my own personal experience. So I spent 16 years selling packaging. In 16 years, I only had sales training once. That was in my first month when they sent me on a 3-day TAC training course, which was this cocktail of all things sales. I don't remember much after the first evening, because back in those days, Fred, it was straight in the bar, a bit like your Corona Academy.
No, you've literally described that very first training that I used to run for structured training. Structured training attack were the two market leaders in running these. You could have come on mine.
And so in 16 years, I only went through it once. And so I think what I find in the marketplace when I'm working with organizations that bring me in is they are quite often wowed by the fact that what we're talking about in a sales training session that I deliver is relatively new to them, which scares me and frightens me quite a lot. Because as you've pointed out, what most organizations will do is we'll take them through the product training, and they'll have lots of that, and they get quite bored of it. And every year there's a new light coming out, or a new plug being produced, or a new laptop version, and so they have to go and learn that. I was in car showroom the other evening. Wonderful. You'd love that. Oh, you're a rugby guy, not a cricket guy, right?
Cricket as well, yeah, no cricket.
Oh, okay. I listened to Henry Blofeld was doing a guest speaking thing at a local car dealership. As you foolishly do, Fred, I started talking to the guy who sells the cars, and he told me that he was just off tomorrow to yet another product training session, which makes total sense, right? Every year BMW are bringing a different car out, and so I totally understand that. But I didn't ask him, but I bet if I had have asked him, okay, well, how much are you doing on technique, understanding your prospect, your ability to be incredibly curious, ask really engaging, insightful, deep-rooted questions. What are you doing on that front? I suspect he probably wouldn't understand what the hell I was talking about. So I think in most cases it is product training, and thereby lies probably the challenge why some training that you will deliver, some training that I will deliver, is often looked at a little bit like, what is this weird science? Because we don't normally see this. And then, of course, it's really challenging once they get through the exciting and then they can start to see some payback. And I think, actually, this could work. And then you send them off into the distance to go and put it into practice. And then sadly, and I guess this is another reason why sometimes training doesn't work. I'm going to ask you about that again at the end, but they put it into practice, but they're not consistent enough. And they don't do the consistency. They're not held accountable positively by their management team or by themselves for that matter. They don't need a manager to hold them accountable, but very few will want to go and do this on their own. That's when the thing starts to unravel. And it's not too surprising when sometimes I see even some of my clients 12 months later slipping back into those bad habits of posting, here's where we are at the NEC, come and visit on stand 25.
Yeah, of course, our new buttons and our new screens and stuff. And yeah, there was a sales director I was talking to who'd seen the stuff I was talking about, understands it, thinks it's really cool, told me that, and said, but I can't use you. I went, well, that doesn't make any sense. If you've seen it, you understand, you think it's really cool. He went, I have to spend my training budget on sending the team to Germany for product training. I've been told by head office that's what I've got to do. And I'm just like, why did you even tell me that, mate? Why did you just not get in touch? I'd have preferred it the other way around, because it just, I was just like, oh, and I think that's probably fairly normal. Certainly in some of the more traditional, I'm not sure that's the right word, but let's go with it. So the areas we like working in, so manufacturing, engineering, I think that's probably quite commonplace, and there is such opportunity to take on not even some of the really spangly new stuff, but to just uplift some of the ways of doing things, which will just gain so much competitive advantage because no one else is doing it in the industry. That's the reason for not doing it, isn't it? Or no one else is doing it in the industry. Yeah, that's also frustrating. But you could be blowing people out of the water where you're the go-to. Everyone wants to speak to you because of how you engage. Whereas poor customers just getting the same from everyone, which is probably walking website stuff.
So I want to get back to the book because I want people to buy the book. It's out this week. So we are recording this on the 18th of November. It's out in 2 days' time, Fred?
2 days' time, 20th, yeah.
On the 20th, right. So a couple of quick fires about the book. How long did it take you to write it? And don't give me the classic answer, which is 24 years, Matt.
Too long. It's funny. I smashed out probably the first 80% really quite fast. I had a very good writing discipline. Up every morning, 5 o'clock, 1 hour before I went to the gym. Bang, 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 bang. That's the way to write.
That's the way to do it.
You have to do like that. And then I hit speed bump. I don't know what went on. I just started getting kind of I'm doing the wrong thing, blah, 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 blah. I just went off track a little bit. Then when I got myself back on, bang, like it was another couple of weeks. So you could argue it was about 3 months and 25 years. But in reality, it was about 9.
Yeah. Every good sales book needs an acronym.
Yeah. You know how simple I am, don't you? That's why you're grinning. Well, the acronym's ethical.
Of course it is. Can you just walk us through that acronym, please?
Okay, so E is for empathetic communication. So it's understanding what EQ is, that we've been talking about already. So being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and then being able to use that to ask better questions and to be able to, and listening and managing conversations better as a result. T is for transparency and integrity. So this is about being open, being honest. And techniques which go with that are things like lead with a flaw. Now, Todd Caponi talks about this, where if you're not right, say so. Don't hide and think, okay, maybe they won't notice. Say, hey, look, if this is the most important thing for you, then we're probably not best. But if this and this and this is also important, then we certainly are. Huge trust builder. We then go into holistic value creation. So this is about value-based selling. Biggest thing to take from that is that you don't define value, customer does. It's like beauty in the eye of the beholder. And again, there are tools, there's techniques, there's ways of thinking to do that. I cover those. Where are we? ATHI is informed decision making. So this is the whole thing about giving people all the right information, not pushing. The segment in there is on buyer safety. Hugely quoting Simon Bone, which is where I picked that stuff up from originally, who's been good enough to write the foreword for me as well. Then we go into collaborative relationship building, which is basically book one. So it's actually, you don't need to buy book one, because I took book one, squashed it into one chapter and said, hey, look, that's how this bit works. So I kind of done myself out of those book sales. But hey, look, this is the most up-to-date one. But yeah, that's the thing, like a partner, and kind of how we sit alongside people to co-create and work on stuff together rather than kind of fight. A is then for adaptive negotiation. So again, what I'm doing in that chapter is just talking about principled negotiation, which is kind of was the way that most people in business would look at stuff. So the old Harvard get yes thing.
Yep.
But everyone seems to love Chris Voss at the moment. So there's a little piece around is crisis negotiation actually right for commercial organizations, or is it clever marketing? I don't go too much into that because I don't want to be too philosophical and stuff. I want to say, well, there is some great stuff in there. Let's have a look at these. Let's mesh them together and take the best of both so that we can manage the negotiation conversations, that we can respond to micro moments. So things happen that we respond to that take us down the path of where we're going to go for best results. And then the L of ethical is learning and growth. So as a, of course I'm going to write that.
Of course.
but it very much is. It's like if we're responsible to serve our customers and be doing the best for them, we've got to be on top of our game. We've got to be bringing the best to the party. We've got to understand how to apply some of this stuff, keeping on top. So I mentioned growth mindset in that. I talk about the Dunning-Kruger curve, which I think a lot of salespeople probably aren't aware of, which would be an age definition of not knowing, but this kind of the competence and confidence and competence curve, where with little competence, people are often quite confident because they don't know what they don't know. But then as you start to really unpack this, you go into this sort of, oh my word, I don't really know this stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably what happened to me when I was writing it. Case study. Oh, I've been a Dunning-Kruger poster child anyway for different reasons. But, maybe that was a thing that's going on there. So, yeah, that's the ethical model. So
wonderful. And last question on the book: was there a particular chapter that stuck out for you more than most, and if so, which one and why?
Facetious answer is the one where I got to promote my own other book. Probably learning and growth, because that's what I do. It's what you do for a living. It's close to my heart. But really, I think if people can nail that a bit, actually just read that chapter, even if you don't read the rest of the ethical model, but you take the learning and growth lessons and then go and find your own stuff that you could apply to kind of up the game in the way we need to sell today, then brilliant. I'm happy, job done. You don't need to use that model. It's just a starter, thinking starters as to how you can take some of this stuff and apply it alongside what other selling you're doing. And that was the other thing, that it's, if you some people are Medic and Spin and Miller Hyman and Challenger and Gap, and what you train, what I train, what everyone else trains, sits alongside it. So competition to no one, compliment to everyone.
Thank you so much for that, and again, encourage everyone who's listening to go and buy Fred's book. Before I let you go, Fred, I foolishly cobbled together 3 quickfire questions that aren't quickfire at all. Are you okay to go there? Can I ask you?
What do you mean that you've now spoke to me and realised that I won't answer them quickly?
Well, that's the point. I don't want you to answer them too quickly. I don't want you to give me the one-word answer, which is cappuccino, not flat white. I'd just like you to give me the most succinct answer you can. So if it takes you a sentence or two, great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a statement, or at least 3/4 of a statement, and I want you to finish it in whichever way you feel works best for you. Fred, first one. Sales training appears to be an easy target on LinkedIn. Why?
Oh, because when people don't like something, it's quite easy to hit out against it. Slightly longer version to that is people might have gone on training and they didn't like their own frailties being exposed, because that's what we have to do sometimes. And so it's the trainer's fault. They don't know anything. Load of rubbish. What I'm doing is far better.
Beautiful. Second one. For it to be a critical part of a successful sales team's makeup, what one non-negotiable needs to be evident?
Coaching.
Because,
again, you touched on this bit where it's easy for us to rock up and do a 2-day session, 3-day, even, this is what I was speaking to you about before we hit record, kind of spreading it over a longer period with shorter interventions. But if you're not constantly looking to how you can develop and keep applying that in real life and doing that thinking, you're probably going to drop back to where you were before, or you're missing an opportunity to keep moving it forward and advancing.
Brilliant. Final one then. This will be an interesting one, Fred. Someone asked me this the other day. What upsides can you see with a classic 1-day or 2-day sales training masterclass?
Okay, slightly facetious answer. It's better than nothing. But I say it's only slightly facetious. What it should do then, if that is what we're doing, it's got to be a launch pad into something else. If it's just a one-off, let's do this, tick the box, it is pointless. Actually, nothing might be better, to be fair. It's just distracting. But if it's a masterclass, because here are things that we're going to start the thinking around, now take this and run with it, but this is how you run with it, and here's the support, and here's the stuff which will help you apply, then absolutely, yeah. And it can be a 1-day masterclass, or it could be a 6 different sessions, 1 hour split. That's how I offer them.
Yeah, someone asked me that a couple of weeks ago. In fact, it was another trainer in a different industry, works in the root cause analysis sector. But he said, don't forget the fact that by bringing people together in its own right is always an upside.
Well, that's what happened to me last week, actually. We had guys flying in from all over region, and they were working on massive projects. They'd never met each other. But the masterclass thing, I actually did take a bit of a change in stance on this. So I pushed back completely on that and saying it doesn't make a difference. It needs to be the full-on program, otherwise you won't get stuff. And then realised I was wrong, actually. Happens. Often. No, and I reconfigured. Well, actually, no, if we're going to do this, then let's put it into a 1-dayer, but it's the easiest ABC options. Activator is a 1-dayer, it's team in the room. Blueprint Live, it's 6 sessions of an hour and a half where we kind of cut a little bit, people go away, apply it, come back, and then we apply again. Coaching isn't really coaching, I just call it that because I like ABC. And that's doing it one-to-one with somebody, probably a sales manager, to give them the working parts that they can then take and implement. So yeah, it's it does have an effect if you're setting it up right.
Fred Copestake, what an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. We've talked for a good over an hour now. We're going to carry on talking for longer, I'm sure. I'd love the opportunity to get you back on at some point in the future when book number 4 comes out, or even sooner, depending on what you feel like.
I'm not sure about book 4.
Encourage everybody who's listening to go and buy the copy of, in fact, go and buy all Fred's books, but certainly get the new book coming out on the 20th of November, Ethical Selling. Fred, I assume LinkedIn's the place to find you, right?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. If you've heard this, ping me a connect. Don't follow, ping a connect and say that you'd heard us chat. That'd be really good. I can hit on that. That's what we've done. Put it out there.
Fred, thanks ever so much for joining me on the Sales Cadence podcast.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it.